Hello and welcome to citiesabc.com series of interviews and profiling with leading global thought leaders, experts and people shaping the world and creating new narratives for our society and business and industry. My name is Dinis Guarda and I'm here to talk about the biggest problems that humanity is facing, the questions and challenges, and how can we think bigger and out of the box. citiesabc.com is a new wiki for AR smart cities tech digital platform for reinventing and uniting cities, universities, and all of us as citizens. Today, I have with us Daniel Sloan, that is a global technologist and as well entrepreneur and investor, and that has been in the information technology industry for a lot of time, but as well has been building business for the last 25 years. Daniel is the co-founder and leading blockchain and AI practice manager at Future Tech and RebuildTheChain pandemic management platform. Daniel, a pleasure to have you here.
You as well.
And a lot of
Thank
things.
you, Dinis.
Okay, so to start, and I think I would like to go through the basics because you have a very interesting challenge profile in the sense that you've been a Marine, you've been doing a lot of things in terms of different areas of the industry, but as well coming from a lot of different areas, and right now very focused on innovation, blockchain, technology, AI, but as well trying to find things that are really focused on social impact and changing the world. So can you tell us a bit about your background, your history, education, a bit of childhood? I think is interesting as well on that
Absolutely.
level.
Yeah. So right out of high school, I joined the Marine Corps. It was right before Desert Shield, which is, the war in the Persian Gulf. I saw that conflict happening and felt called to join the military and serve, and was in the Marines for about 4 years. A lot of people, when I tell them about my Marine Corps service, they always say, well, where are you stationed? And I say, well, Kaneohe Bay, Hawaii. And they always like, oh, that's not a very tough duty. So I did get fortunate enough after everything in the war in Iraq was over, the first one, to get stationed in Hawaii, and spent 4 years in the Marines and was very fortunate, enjoyed my time there. Wanted to kind of pursue a career to where I could grow and actually make some money. Because when you're in the military, you're there to serve. You're not there to make any money, right? And as a young man, I wanted to make my mark on the world and go out and be successful. And so I had to go home to Michigan. My father was pretty ill, so that took me from where I was living back to Michigan, and then from there, ended up in Boston. And through a job that I'd gotten through a recruiting company, they saw something in me and said, "Hey, wow, we'd love to train you as a technical recruiter." So that's how I got my start in technology. Got trained as a technical recruiter, and fast forward about a year and a half, almost 2 years, was approached by a couple SAP consultants that I had been working with to say, we're starting a company. SAP is super hot right now. We'd love to have you come in and run it and do the recruiting and business development. And so that was my first entrepreneurial venture there in the end of 96, 97. And I've been a serial entrepreneur since. I've built multiple companies, have had successful exits. And I've been in the blockchain space since, I'd say close to the end of 2016. I immediately fell in love with the technology. Anytime when you start having conversations with people about, well, we've never been able to do this before until now. It's just amazing to me, all the use cases and problems that blockchain solves that we've had in certain industries for years and years and years. The first use case that I saw that was an in production use case, which means that the application was built, the company was using it, was a blockchain-based natural gas application that an aggregator was using. And so I said, so what problem is blockchain solving for you? He says, well, when you are trading gas in the pipeline, it could trade hands multiple times. So many times it's hard to keep track. But we have a paper trail for that. But they have what's called a cut, right? So if you're selling me the natural gas and I'm supposed to end up receiving that, but I don't, because in the pipeline you sold it to somebody else, I have the opportunity to go back to you. I not only get my money back, but there's a penalty on that. You've got to pay me for that cut. So the problem existed to where it would take them, 60 to 90 days to figure out who cut them in the pipeline. So you had that whole lag time between getting your money back and your little penalties and fees or whatever. So this blockchain application put all of these transactions on the blockchain and set it up to a point to where it took 90 seconds to figure out who cuts you in the pipeline. So that just blew my mind. I was like, wow, we went from something that was a manual process that could take up to 90 days to 90 seconds. And it just totally transformed how they did their business. They started kicking people out, who was cutting them in the pipeline all the time. So that's where I really fell in love with blockchain, and started working around 2017 after doing a few projects with my existing company, which was a consulting staffing firm. And just for the past 3.5 years, been doing software development in both blockchain and AI, and partnered up with a company called Accubits about 2 years ago, brought them in on projects, and our relationship just grew and grew. And we decided to do a joint venture, which is how Future Tech was born. And we actually linked up with a company called Cybermate Infotech, which is a 26-year-old publicly traded company. And they have a lot of expertise in legacy systems, ERPs. They've got a great capability in recruiting. So all three of us came together, formed the company. I was able to bring from Accubits, the US president of Accubits. I was able to bring him in to be partners on the deal. So there's 4 of us that have come together to do Future Tech, and we've been super excited. And I think most recently, what people are asking me about is our pandemic management solution, RebuildTheChain.
Very, very exciting. And I think it's interesting to look at your background as from military to technology to investment, and as well right now to very concrete solutions towards big problems. So from this background, and in terms, I would like to touch a bit on your education. So you have a technology education, or you learn on that level because you advancing on that. Just to give a bit of context on that level, we have a lot of education at universities. Sure. Audience who would like to get that touch.
I think you really have to be educated in the IT space in order to be effective. So when I first got in, obviously I was a neophyte. I didn't know anything about technology. I did have the good fortune of having a mother that was kind of a nerd. She loved computers. I mean, back in the day, IBM clone. I mean, she bought me my first computer, which was a VIC-20, right? You put the cassette in, you go out and, go do your chores and come back an hour and a half later and you're playing Pong, right? So I was definitely lucky enough to catch the bug on tech early. I remember saving up for months and months and months when I was a Marine, working side jobs to buy my first, 386, right? I think that thing was like $3,500, which was like, all the world and money in the world to me at the time. But luckily with the company that I went to work for in Boston, Seek, they trained me for about 2 months. So before I even got on the phone and started, making calls and kind of starting my career as a technical recruiter, they put us through classroom training. So we went all the way back from mainframe, went to client server, and it was pretty intense. It was not like a boot camp to where, we started out with 100 guys and we only graduated 25, but the class was about 30. And I think we ended up with about 20. So about 10 people dropped out during the process that, just wasn't able to kind of pick up and learn. And then through the years of, when you're a recruiter, you get the benefit of talking to technical people that are telling you about what they're doing. So you have to understand what they're doing in order to be able to translate that to your client that says, okay, so let's say SAP, for example, what is this person doing in SAP? Are they a developer? Are they doing ABAP? Or are they a functional person? Are they configuring it? If you just throw a resume to a company and say, you needed somebody in SAP, here's somebody in SAP, you aren't going to be doing business with them for very long because they're hiring you to find a specific niche skill that services their needs. So in a way, I was kind of forced to have to learn technology to be a good recruiter, to be good in this job, because the more you could hone down and find the right skills and the right people to provide, the more successful you were. And so, yeah, I've just been kind of a lifelong learner in tech. I love it. But other than, a few classes here and there, non classes, I did not go to university for tech.
Oh, very, very interesting. And I think this is very important to contextualize because one of the challenges with our present business, and I think all the challenges of the world economy is precisely how you touch and how you handle tech. And this brings me to my second focus or in terms of the questions for you. So you are right now working in multiple companies, and all of them working very advanced solutions for technology, especially in blockchain and AI. So how do you see, before you go to the companies, how do you see blockchain and AI and these technologies from your experience? Like you said, you mentioned the case study of the velocity for supply chain and all the different things that you have. And I think this is very important to demystify, because there's still a huge wrong perception about the concept of blockchain. And when I talk about AI, it's kind of this blurred science fiction stuff. So how do you see that part, and as well your experience right now working very concrete cases of technology solutions, and as well in big ventures on this area?
Absolutely. So, I feel very blessed and fortunate that I did get into SAP at kind of the height of it from a mass adoption standpoint, because I got to work here in Houston between Shell and Exxon, and it seemed like almost every major oil and gas firm within a span of a year all signed up to get SAP. There's a few companies that did PeopleSoft and Oracle and some other stuff, but and as a young man at that time coming in, it was actually kind of shocking how much of an atom bomb this technology was, because SAP would come in and literally destroy and replace every system that it touched, right? So you have an accounting system that has been there and was built on this, and you've got a whole team of programmers supporting it. Next thing you know, like, hey guys, you all got to learn SAP, and some of you, we don't need all of you, you're all fired. So it was very disruptive from the standpoint of that it went in and totally annihilated and replaced everything that was there previously, right? You don't integrate SAP, SAP takes over. I think conversely with blockchain and AI, their actual enhancements, integration to technology. So with the natural gas application I mentioned, that wasn't a brand new application that was built and was completely blockchain. That was actually an integration in, and it connected to their existing trading system. So what it did was it added this enhanced functionality and reporting and all these things that enabled them. So we didn't have to go in and replace their systems and do that stuff. We went in and enhanced that and made it better. So I really feel like when you look at blockchain and you look at how you can come in and take that and make a system that you already have better, or if you are building a new system, architected in a way that leverages blockchain to enhance it.
Very interesting. And so coming right now to your work in terms of, especially with the Future Tech and Rebuild the Chain. So how did you come up with these companies, with your partners, and how did you come back with this? Because you've been talking with the likes of NASDAQ about technology and blockchain, but as well building something that is solutions for governments, and as well in this case right now with COVID-19, which is a very particular emergent problem and actually very urgent in a lot of ways.
For sure. And I want to immediately give credit to Jathin, who's my partner, and he's the founder and CEO of Accubits, right? So Accubits actually has a biotech research arm that has virologists, has microbiologists. And so when COVID-19 hit, he basically went in, told the team, listen, let's stop the research that we're doing right now. Let's jump in on COVID-19. This is a major problem. Maybe we can help. And actually through their research, they found a molecule that they thought could potentially be a key to a cure. Obviously they didn't have the resources to kind of move forward with the research on that. So they open sourced that. And so through that whole process, I think Jathin really got intimate with the understanding that there is no pharmaceutical way to treat our current situation, right? So with AIDS, with SARS, with all of these things that, potentially are infectious and, are a problem, there's vaccines, there's things that you can use, there's pharmaceutical ways. So I think having a platform like RebuildTheChain was really the only way to kind of have a tool that governments could use to effectively, manage people, help with social distancing, create the ability for the people to see where hotspots were. The tool has health cards that you can get issued to know that, hey, I've been tested, I'm COVID free. So it was interesting. It wasn't like a lot of companies I've seen that are tech companies that say, hey, we could build some tech to help this. There was this, from the medical, from the deep understanding standpoint of having that biotech lab, that they were able to say, hey, how can we come at this, and what can we do from a technology standpoint to really, really give a tool that could be useful. So I got pulled in probably about 2 or 3 weeks after they really started having major interest from large governments like Brazil and UAE. And he's like, we're getting more interest than we can handle. I need you to take over and handle the sales and build out our value-added reseller program. So that's when I got involved.
Oh, very interesting. So can you tell us a bit about Future Tech? What's the company? What are you doing right now, and what are the main focus on that?
Sure. So again, Future Tech's a joint venture between my company, Accubits, and CyberMate Infotech. And the focus of the company was to basically combine all of our capabilities together. So when we are working with an enterprise, we're a united front. If we need legacy type of applications to bring in to connect with some of the cutting edge blockchain AI, that's where CyberMate comes in. So, we felt together coming at this as one company delivering one solution would be much better than, just coming in and then trying to, pull everyone together on a project by project basis. Future Tech is the master reseller for all of Accubits products, right? So there's multiple products that they have, between an AI facial recognition platform called Emotex to a document certification platform called AccuCerts that's on the blockchain. So there's a number of products, and Jiten said it well. He goes, we're really good at building technology. We're not necessarily the best at promoting what we do. And that's what you guys are good at. And one of the reasons why they wanted to partner with us. So really, we're kind of like that bullhorn, that marketing arm for them. But also, we have a number of high-level resources that work for us here in the U.S., right? So the head of our project management office, we've got a solutions architect that I'm bringing on, business analysts. So when we're working with a customer, when we actually can get back to the point of traveling, right? We can actually, if it's a US-based customer, we can actually go on site, sit down, do the business requirements gathering, versus Accubits team is in India. And, that distance sometimes is difficult to work with companies. So, we have an onshore offshore model, which I think works really well, because it also helps us reduce the cost of companies from a development standpoint.
So can you explain a bit? So you mentioned a lot of very high-profile platform projects and actually products,
Mm-hmm.
like, for instance, document sign up, AI, medtech, and a couple of things that are really quite exciting. Do we have any specific areas that you want to highlight about what you're doing? And I wanted then to touch RebuildTheChain, but before that.
Yeah. So, all of these are enterprise applications that companies can use to leverage the benefits of whether it's blockchain AI. One of the products that we have, actually, it's being white labeled with another company called BotSup, but it's actually a very intuitive AI chatbot, right? So that's a product that, when we look at architecting a solution for a company and they're saying, well, we need to have that kind of chatbot type of feature, having this robust AI driven chatbot to where, you can build out the logic of the conversations and make it in a way to where you don't really feel like it's one of those clunky chatbots, right? To where you're just mashing the, talk to agent. So the team actually showed me a proof of concept project they put together for Lexus. And it was very cool, because it actually, when I was going in there and I was like, why are you, what can we help you with today? Well, I want to buy a car. It walked me through the whole process of the car and what features I wanted. And it was very intuitive. And it got to the point of, hey, you can either have the option to buy this car right now, or you can talk to somebody about it. Right. That's really invaluable for a company that maybe has, a limited number of customer service support or things like that. And, what we hear from clients is they get a lot of the same conversations over and over again. Hey, I'm calling because I'm trying to set up my wallet, or, hey, it's the same questions over and over and over again. And if you can have an intelligent tool that can mitigate the need for them to actually call in and talk to somebody, that's a lot of efficiency and time. So that's just one good example of some of our products.
And these products right now, so this is B2B products that you're looking enterprise products. You are right now promoting worldwide in terms of taking to governments, because one of the things I see in terms of the work you're doing is really focus on technology for governments and big organizations. So on this
Yeah.
level, how do you suggest, for instance, one of the challenges definitely we have in terms of governments is the digital transformation at large, but as well getting the right solutions for this. And it's very complex to do things with governments. And as well, it's more urgent than ever. So how would you touch that area? That, for instance, how do you do design of these projects and some of the technology that you've been building?
Sure. And really, it's interesting because if we go back a couple months, and I'm looking at, you know, my next 3-4 months of how I'm planning out and what our, you know, what our go to market strategy is, you know, who the companies we're going to partner with. Identifying companies that had strong relationships with governments was not top of my list, right? You know, COVID-19 kind of changed all of that in direction. Again, you know, I don't think if you go back 3 months, Jathin and Accubits would have been thinking they were going to develop a pandemic management solution, right? So, you know, I think one of the things that you have to be in business is you have to be nimble and flexible and identify, you know, where areas are, how can you address them. So, you know, when RebuildTheChain was created, and we saw that this could be an amazing tool to help governments, you know, not only stop the spread of COVID-19, but also give them the ability to kind of bring people back from self-quarantine, isolation, get people back to work. You know, then it became very important to say, we need to get this information into the right hands of people at government. And I think you said it very poignantly. It's not easy working with governments. So instead of us trying to bang on the doors of 196 countries and saying, hey, we have this amazing solution that can fix the problem that you have, we've decided to go with this, what's called a value-added reseller program, right? So we partner with companies that are already working with governments, that already have relationships. And so they bring the solution in, they present that to them. And then when they get to the point of like, hey, you know, we want to implement this, this is something that we want to deploy, then we do all the technology back end piece of that for them. So they basically act as our sales agent, if you will. They go out and engage the governments. We obviously support all that, but we're not picking up the baton and trying to carry that to the front door of the Capitol building and saying, hey, I have this great tech. So that's how we're doing that.
Good. So, and for instance, do you have any specific case that you want to highlight, for instance, for governments? Because I think one of the things when we speak about blockchain, and I think you touched it very well previously, is that there's definitely a big challenge in terms of, first of all, looking at very practical cases that work, because there's a lot of theory, and besides crypto, which is of course major known for good and for bad, there's lack of case studies that really work. So do you have like 1 or 2 case studies that you can highlight with use of blockchain technology, and especially probably the blockchain and then the use of blockchain with AI, which I think is interesting as well?
For sure. Absolutely. You know, I think when we kind of go into how we first started engaging governments, I think, you know, the very first government that Accubits started engaging with was Dubai. And we have a large team in Dubai. We've been working on it's called the Smart Cities project. You may have heard of it. So the Dubai government wants to basically have all of their applications running on blockchain. There's a number of blockchain projects that Accubits has already completed for them. They basically have built a blockchain-based land registry system that basically records all the land. So you have this immutable record of who owns what on the country. They did an application for the police department there that I thought was interesting. And, you know, so it was that close relationship that allowed them to basically showcase RebuildTheChain in its very early stages, right? Say, hey, we just built this. We're still working everything out. Would you be interested? They said, absolutely, you know. And so through that relationship, the Dubai government got to a point to where they said, we want this. We're ready to move forward. And then from there, what I'm told is the federal government got involved and said, listen, let's not just focus on the Emirate of Dubai. Let's look at all the Emirates. Maybe we do this on a federal level. So then that's how that conversation started happening. So when you start talking about, what other applications are we doing with that? So they have a government identity management solution called SmartPass. So the idea was, let's integrate SmartPass in with RebuildTheChain. So now we have that ability to where people already have their SmartPass to identify them and who they are. That enables and has for better, tracking inside of RebuildTheChain. And then the conversation went to these disinfecting gates, right? So how can we connect the solution to where, from an AI machine learning standpoint, all the information that's coming in from that disinfecting gate is getting loaded into the platform and being able to be viewed for, analytics and such like that. So imagine you're walking into an office building that has this disinfecting gate, right? You need to swipe your scan your QR code, which is connected to RebuildTheChain, which is connected to the identity management platform, right? So it identifies you, Dinis, and says, okay, we know who you are. Yes. We see that you have a health card. So there's a health card system here, right? So people that have been tested and the government issues them a health card that says, hey, you don't have COVID, you can move around freely. That identifies that. It even identifies, hey, you had it, but you're in remission, but you have the ability to move around. You're allowed to be in this area. From that standpoint, you're going through the disinfecting gate. It's not only disinfecting you, but it's reading your temperature, it's taking other things, and it's feeding that into the platform. So I think that's just a really cool kind of case study, if you will, of showing how all these technologies that are there now, we're combining them and bringing them into the platform to help them better have data and manage how people move around. And so let's say you have a health card that's green. You don't have COVID, but you go through this disinfecting gate and you have a very high temperature. Well, now we know, that you have a high temperature. You get an alert that says, hey, we'd like you to come get tested. You potentially have COVID, or you might just have a fever, have a cold, but that's a call to action to have you go, do something and saying, hey, your health card now is, and again, all of these things are in process, right? The SmartPass isn't integrated yet. The disinfecting gates aren't integrated yet, but this is all the conversations that we're having early on around, you want the platform, you want the functionality, but you also want it to do all of these things. So pretty cool stuff, huh?
No, very, very interesting. Actually, it's you need to promote that more, because there's a lot of lack of just understanding that. So one question I have on that, and of course it's quite obvious, but I think would be interesting for our audience. So these areas of identity, smart cities, and all this kind of things, especially with healthcare, are massive positive for all of us, but they bring a big dimension of security, privacy, and a lot of others. For instance, the FBI and the Interpol recently talk about the ransom issues with cybersecurity, but one point is really our own private privacy. So as a technologist and as well leading quite accelerated technologies that are really being used by millions of people, how do you scale this as well, point one? And second, how do you look at the privacy issues and all these areas of data protection and things related?
Yeah, absolutely. And so this is the one area that I'm actually most proud about with the platform, and was very excited that this was architected in a way to where citizen privacy and data security was at the forefront of the thought when it was being architected. I'm sure you're seeing lots of examples of countries using track and trace apps, right? I think China has one. And given China's China, they're a communist country, they don't care about privacy of their citizens. They want to know where they are. They want to command and control them. They want to big brother them. That's their culture. So there's nothing. So once you have the app, once you've downloaded it, they know who you are. They know where you are. They know what you've been. And that's just the fact of life. With RebuildTheChain, it was built in a way to where all the data that is transmitted to the government from your app is anonymous, right? So it can see, this 6-digit number or whatever it is, this identifier that's you, Dinis, but they don't know it's you. They don't know who you are. They took it a step further from the privacy and security standpoint. Let's say you got tested, you tested positive for COVID-19, and the government's like, well, we want to make sure you're safe. We want to make sure you get the medical attention you need. And we also want to go and look where you've been the last 2 weeks. Where did you go? What places did you interact with? So we could, do kind of a back trace and notify and try to analyze that. So they would ask you for permission to unlock your data. So all that anonymous data that you've been sending them they can identify it's you. You have what's called a private key because we've implemented blockchain as part of the solution, right? So you have a key that unlocks your data and only you have it. So if I'm the government and I say, Dinis, I need, you got COVID-19, give me your private key. We hope you're a good citizen and you say, absolutely, I want you to backtrace me. I want to cooperate. Here's my key, unlock the data. But if you're not, and you're a bit of an anarchist and you say, screw you, no, I don't care. I'm just going to stay in my house. I'm not going to go anywhere. They can't go in and hack your data and unlock it and do anything like that. So really the citizen has 100% control over their data and who accesses it. And again, even if the government wanted to access your data, they cannot, because they cannot unlock that without that private key.
Yeah, that's right. But I think it's a question that I have as well, even building blockchain, but as well building platforms, is that you can always go to the point that, of course, if someone gets access to the administration part of the blockchain or has control on the coding, can actually get into that data. So going a bit more technical on that level, what can be done, and I'm talking about not just this case, but a lot of the cases you're working, to make sure that this private data gets really owned by the users? Because we have still a massive, well, first of all, very few people are looking at these details, because that's the problem that we have around the world. And of course, I think probably you are one of the few companies that is building successful blockchain technology that I know, at least. And at least one of the challenges we've been finding, even on my experiences, is that, for instance, if you have a government that is not very conscious of privacy, they always will be able to go to the private keys and get access to that. So are you looking at that? Not going to energy and politics is not the purpose of this, for sure. But it's just understanding that part from a technology and from a almost humanitarian perspective, let's put it that way.
So without trying to get too technical, because again, I am the business guy, I'm not the techie, right? So I'm sure if we had one of our engineers on, they could probably bore you to death with the technology side of it. But I think for people to understand this at a very layman standpoint is that it is hashed data, which means that data, they can't access it, they can't read it, and only the citizen has the private key. So they don't even have a record of where the private keys are at. So again, this data is anonymous, it's hashed in the system, they can't read it, it's gobbledygook to them, and until you give them that private key to unlock your data, it's unviewable. So I think we could definitely get a little more of a technical spin for that, and in more detail. I could ask one of our guys to kind of go into exactly how that happens on the blockchain, how it's done. But I think for just like a layman's understanding is, this hash data is impossible to read or decipher. And without your key that only you have, the government can unlock it. So that's the assurity. So that gives you the confidence as a citizen to say, okay, I don't want the government big brothering me, but I also want to help stop the spread of this. And there's also a positive note to the citizen, right? So with the digital health card, right? So Dinis, you got tested, you're COVID-free, you get a digital passport, if you will, health card that allows you access to areas. So my vision for this is that we start establishing green zones to where there's shops and restaurants and everything in this green zone, and they have been like thoroughly scrubbed, they've been thoroughly cleaned. All the employees, anybody that enters this area has all been tested for COVID-19 and all have a clean passport, right? So through this application, now we're allowing citizens to leave their home, because they're in their home and they know they're safe, right? They're jumping in their car and they know they're not going to get COVID in their car. And they're driving to this green zone and they're using their health card to get scanned in and to come into the area. So now once they're in the green zone, there's no more need for scanning health cards or anything, because everything inside that area is clean. Everybody that's there is COVID-free. And now you can move around and operate as you are. So if you decide as a citizen, so Brazil is mandating this for all their citizens, right? They want everyone to have it so they can have the data, so they can, really, they've taken this very seriously. So our suggestion to them is, let's start taking this methodology of green zones and other areas to be able to kind of open up commerce. So if I'm a Brazilian citizen, I say, I'm not going to download the app. I'm not going to use this. Well, I can't go into this green zone then, can I? I can't get access to all these shops. I can't move around freely. I'm going to be restricted in the things that I can go and things that I can do because I haven't followed the protocol, which is keeping everybody safe. So I think the tool has the positive effects of being able to get people to come back together and interact. And, you know, I was seeing a news story, and this lady was like breaking down crying. She's like, I want to get married. I want to have my family here. You know, I have 500 people that I want to have. I can't have this wedding. I have to do it over Zoom. She was breaking down. And I was just thinking, I was like, wow, what if we set it up to where, you know, we had like drive-through testing, right? So everybody that wanted to come to the wedding had to get tested right then and there. They get tested, boom, they get their green passport, boom, I can go in. The whole area for the wedding has all been cleaned. Everybody that's there has been tested. They could basically have their wedding today if we had the system in place for them to be able to ensure that everybody that entered was COVID-free and that the area that they're in is clean. So I think it's a way to really help us get back to normal without the, you know, the fear of, I know I'm clean, I leave my home, I go to an area, and then somebody that does have COVID is in that area, and all of a sudden I end up get infected.
Yeah, that's a very interesting thing. So I think coming back right now to that part, which is part of what you're doing. So what was the genesis for this project with Brazil? You're working with the government, you're working with because Brazil is a very sensitive government, and it's always tricky when you go to these cases of data, and especially this amount of data. But I would like to talk right now about the RebuildTheChain, the project RebuildTheChain, which is a big project, and you partly touch it right now with this case of Brazil. But could you just explain to our audience and to the people that will listen to this, how did you come up with RebuildTheChain? What's the mission, and how you want to take this to the next level in terms of solutions to COVID-19 and related things?
For sure. Yeah. As I said a little earlier, you know, Jathan, who's the CEO of Accubits, this was really his brainchild, you know, through all the work that they were doing with the biotech lab there at Accubits of, you know, the work on COVID. They understood that a vaccine was not likely to come for, you know, 1.5 to 2 years. So what do we do in that 1.5 to 2 years? We all can't sit at home forever. We all can't just be self-isolated. The world can't shut down. There has to be a non-pharmaceutical way to manage this process, to help keep people safe, help with social distancing. You know, the platform has a self-diagnosis questionnaire in there. The integrations that we're talking about earlier, as far as disinfecting gates and in nationwide identity management solutions, these are all things that will come together that, as a platform, governments will be able to use to kind of safely let people leave their homes and reopen things. So Brazil is through a partner. There's a lot of things and happening there that are still kind of confidential, that I can't mention the partner's name or go into too many details. But I will say that the government there took this very, very seriously. And I was quite surprised that within, you know, a span of, I think 4 weeks to 5 weeks, they went from the process of learning about the platform, getting it all demonstrated, doing all the due diligence, going all the way to the point of putting it on the president's desk to say, we need to spend the money on this because this is going to help us not only stop the spread of COVID-19, but it's going to help us get our economy going back again. And then it's my understanding that those contracts have all been signed and it's in the procurement process. So just waiting to get the initial payment so the team can go out and start deploying. So what's interesting about this project was the decision to not do it on a federal level, but to do it per state. So there's 26 states in Brazil. So instead of having one massive implementation that the federal government manages, and I think there's 210 million people in Brazil, they are empowering the states to each have their own RebuildTheChain for the state, which will obviously connect to every other state's platform, right? So it'll all be interconnected, but each state will be responsible for managing their own citizens, right? And they can do customizations to the platform. So if the capital state of Brasilia wants to do, let's say, these disinfecting gates, but you know, Rio de Janeiro decides they don't want to do it, the federal government isn't going to mandate any of that. They're empowering the states to do this, but they're helping pay and subsidize that. So I thought that was really interesting. And for us, we're looking at it as having, all these multiple implementations. That's also going to give us the ability to get a lot of lessons learned, build up best practices. And so I think it's good transition to talk about the UAE, right? Remember I mentioned that we started with the Emirate of Dubai, and then that project got kicked up to the federal level. There are only 10 million people in all of UAE. So I think it made more sense to them to have one implementation of Rebuild the Chain that they manage at a federal level and that they handle for all the Emirates. So here's kind of a little comparison contrast. I think there's no right or wrong way of doing this. I think Brazil could have did it at the federal level, but they decided to do it at the state level. But at the end of the day, they see the power of the tool and how it enables them to be able to, get all the data, to understand, where the hot zones are, to help manage people that have COVID. And again, we're recommending, this green zone methodology and all these different things. I had a conversation with the government and I laid out my vision. I was like, imagine, you're at an airport, right? And I'm leaving the United States, but I have to go through drive-through testing at the airport, right? I've got to get my digital passport. Once I'm COVID-free, the system issues me my digital passport. When I go to check into the airport, I have to scan that, right? Even though I just in the same area, right? I haven't left, they're still going to scan that. I'm going to fly to my destination. Let's say I'm flying to Dubai. Well, now when I land, I connect to their system, right? That they're Rebuild the Chain. And so now they can scan and see that I have my digital passport. So they know that I'm coming from US, I'm COVID-free. I land there, I'm in a green zone that's COVID-free, but I need to leave the airport, right, Dinis? So the thought process is have cabs, have Ubers that are all been tested every day. The cabs are super clean. Nobody gets in that cab without their digital passport, right? They're going to take me in that clean cab to a green zone, to where all the hotels, all the restaurants, everything. So I go from a COVID-free environment to a COVID-free environment to a COVID-free environment. This enables us to have the highest level of certainty that we can move around and operate, excuse me, but not have the risk of contracting this. So the only way to do this is through a platform like Rebuild the Chain that can manage the health card, can manage, and these are where the green zones are, and really effectively do that. And then it's at a government level, right? That the governments need to basically cooperate globally to say, if we want to travel country to country, we need to be on a system that allows us to know who's coming into our country, what's their health history, and all of that. So we feel like this platform does all that.
It's quite impressive, and I think it's really necessary. And I think probably the challenge, and just one question on this level, and then I want to move to other areas. But I think it's probably the challenge how coordinating this data between different departments, because I think the challenge is, like, for instance, you have the data from one part, then you don't have the data from the other part, and that's kind of the challenge that we see with this kind of data fantastic platforms, which is very easy to implement but difficult to do. Are you trying to do anything to make sure, at least, that, for instance, that, let's say, if the app doesn't pick the entire data from the stuff that might have an issue on these things, how do you just scope on that area? It's a bit technical level, but I'm particularly interested even from a practical perspective, how these technologies interact with other technologies.
Yeah, absolutely. I think interoperability is a huge factor. And typically when you're looking at interoperability, one of the biggest hurdles is that I am connecting to another system that is outside of my technology stack, right? So all of, let's just say Microsoft products, right? They're all architected to connect very, very tightly and integrate with all of the Microsoft products, right? There's never any issues of Microsoft SQL Server talking to this, talking to that. That's the way they're architected. It's Microsoft, right? I think the fact that if we can get governments that all use Rebuild the Chain, and if we could get, and we don't delude ourselves, we don't think every government in the world is going to use this tech, right? Someone's going to develop their own platform or whatever, but the more governments that are using the same platform that has the same standards and the same safety protocols, and if it could be Rebuild the Chain, great, that interconnectivity is so easy, right? It's literally an API that connects, that says, hey, I went from the United States, I landed in Dubai, the cellular network picks up, boom, I'm connected to the cellular network, and then the app that's sitting on the cellular network that the cellular carrier is supporting that says, boom, we're connecting you into our nationwide platform, and now we've identified you. So the functionality for how it works in the US is the same way as the functionality how it works in Dubai, because it's the same platform, right? We're just now connecting the two and basically saying, okay, Daniel Sloan has landed in Dubai. Now you have access to his health card. And now, again, they don't know it's Daniel Sloan. They just know the user identity, right? Because I'm COVID free. So I operate and I move around. And I go throughout that whole country, right? Let's say for whatever reason, I go outside these green zones, right? I decide, hey, there's a restaurant down here that, you know, is supposed to be the best restaurant in the world, and I'm going to go there. And I go there and I end up contracting COVID-19 because when I go to leave, right, I have to take a test in order to get back in the airport, to get in the green zone, right? Even though I came in, I left the green zone. So the app was going to say, hey, Daniel Sloan was operating inside this green zone the whole time, but he went out of the area. So it was going to revoke my health card automatically. The system's going to do it. So I can't get back in the airport. So I got to get tested again. So if I get tested and I've got COVID, now the Dubai government can say, Daniel, give us your private key. Where did you go? Where did you get this COVID from? You were in these green zones this whole time. We need to understand that. I would obviously give them that key, and then they could backtrace me and say, okay, great. Well, guess what? I can't leave Dubai now, can I? I got to go get medical attention. I got to get healthy. But that whole system, from the automation standpoint, enabled the government to basically make it to where I couldn't, through my reckless decisions, go out and infect a bunch of people, right? If you had to literally try to follow me around to figure out where the hell I was going, you know, I went outside the green zone, where'd I go? That's impossible to do. But having this anonymous data to where the government can see that and see I was outside this area, revoke my health card, you know, my digital passport, and make me go get tested again, that's just a way to reaffirm and keep everybody safe. So that's kind of my vision for this, right? Is, you know, if we can just go green zone to green zone to green zone, that's awesome. But there's going to be people that are going to pop out of these green zones. That's fine. We're not restricting that. But in order for you to come back in, you need to get tested. And we'll reissue your, you know, the platform will reissue your card. And if you're not, well, guess what? We caught it early, right? You didn't get 2-3 weeks into this. We caught it right away. Who knows? They might invent something that helps, you know, almost like vitamin C helps a cold, right? Maybe they find out, hey, if you do these therapies, if you just get COVID, it reduces the whole process and helps you get healthier faster. I think the faster you can catch when you're being sick, the more effectively you can treat it. So again, not all these things are in place. I want to preface that. I mean, this, you know, the technology's there, we can do all this, but, you know, this is kind of the future for this, right? How do we move from, you know, you're sitting in your home, I'm sitting in my home, you know, how do we move safely out of our houses? I don't know if you saw that article in India, but they started loosening the restrictions on their quarantine, and the deaths from COVID shot through the roof. Why is that, Dinis? Well, it is because the app that the government has there, the citizens don't want to download it. There's less than 5% of the citizens that downloaded that app. So they can't effectively do the things that we're talking about. So people are leaving the safety of their home because they need to go out, they need to go do things, but there's no process in place to ensure that people that are infected don't come in contact with the people that are infected. So you're starting this whole cycle again of we're all moving again, we're all going to restaurants, we're all going to different places, and people are getting sick. And it seems a little crazy to me to want to go through this whole process again, right? You know, self-quarantine, shutting down the economy. So I think using a product like RebuildTheChain is more important than ever for governments to just effectively open things back up.
Yeah, there's a lot of things there, and I think I completely agree with the strategy. But of course, unfortunately, the geopolitics are very sensitive. But I think it's important to keep up with the solutions, and I think that's what you guys are doing, and it's impressive. So one of them, two last questions, because we are passing 1 hour. She's been passing fast. So you are as well an investor, and you are doing a lot of activities with multiple companies like a coin in Africa and things like that. Do you want to talk about that work, that part of your work?
Absolutely. So, yeah. So, you know, my company, Blockchain Saw, we've been in the blockchain space from helping startups for about 3.5 years. And, you know, we've had the fortune of working with some amazing startups. Acoin which is Acon's project is one of them. I was one of the first investors. We've been their technology partner, and here we are coming up on 2 years now of the project and getting close to the finish line. They're going to be able to announce an IEO on a major exchange here very soon. So I'm excited about that. But, for me, I love tech. And, if we can help these startups not only build great technology that they can use to grow their business, but, being involved with so many, startups, that we've developed a lot of best practices. We've learned a lot of lessons that we can pass on and mentor to some of these entrepreneurs. So not only do we bring our money, but we bring all the knowledge and mentorship that we have. And then also, as a technology partner, this whole startup phase, it's a moment in time, right? They're going to grow, they're going to mature, they're going to start driving revenues, and they know that they have a strong tech partner in us, that as they need to scale their platform, as they need to grow, we're there. And then, we've had projects to where we started out as their tech partner, they started hiring people, we started training them, and then they grew to a point to where instead of us being the majority of their tech development, we ended up being just small of it, which is fine, because we want ultimately that project to be successful because we're owners in it. So I feel like when you're an owner in a project, you operate and act a lot differently than if you're just a vendor, right? You just hire me to do your tech development. You pay me to do your software development. I don't care what I say. I'm going to view your project differently than if I got my own money into it. It's just the facts of life. So we've been really fortunate to work with a lot of startups and do that. And we've got lots of great relationships with investment funds, family offices, and this and that. And so when we get good projects, they co-invest with us. So it's a nice ecosystem that all kind of supports these startups.
And I think that's the way it should be about the idea of ecosystem. So to finish, and I think trying to go through a positive note, you were very positive in the way you're looking at technology, and as well very practical as well. So what would be the advice that you give to young entrepreneurs or people around the world that are listening to us, and as well they want to connect with you? Because we need as well more this narrative of more trust in technology, but as well pragmatic solutions, and as well the idea of building an ecosystem that creates value for everyone.
Absolutely. The first thing that came to my mind is focus to serve, right? Don't focus on, I'm building this to make $1 billion, right? Money is important, but that in and of itself isn't going to drive the passion and put you in the right frame of mind and attitude that's going to attract the people to you, that's going to want to help you in your mission and help you launch, right? That's why I really like social impact projects so much, because we're doing the project with the idea of making a positive impact on the world, doing something good. And you know what? If you do that and you're successful, the money is a byproduct of your success. So I think that's the biggest mistake young entrepreneurs make, is they go after the money, they go after the dollars, but they don't understand that really being successful in what you're doing, that money is a byproduct of that. So you can't put the money as the focal point. You have to put the success and the service and putting your whole heart and everything into that, and that will follow. So that would be the advice I would give them.
And it's a very good way to wrap up this amazing 1 hour with you, Daniel. It's an honor. And
thanks, Dinis, as well. I love it.
A lot of, I think one of the things, just on the last note, where people can find what you're doing, because I think really, especially the case studies you just mentioned here, to be honest, I was mind blown, because I work with blockchain technology since it started. I was one of the first people writing about it, and I didn't find a lot of case studies, especially what you do in Brazil, what you do in Middle East. What can people find about this and find about you and the companies that you are leading?
Yeah, so our website, wearefuturetech.com. We are future tech, right? It's got a little bit of a tagline there. wearefuturetech.com. We actually link to another site, which is RebuildTheChain. So Accubits built that site. So instead of us rebuilding the site, we just we link to that. So that has all the information on RebuildTheChain. And real quick plug, we actually, Accubits team has been for the past month using an adopted version of RebuildTheChain to manage the workforce there. So we now have an enterprise version of RebuildTheChain for companies that want to safely manage their people. And literally the website just went up a couple days ago. So they can learn about that as well. But and as far as the case studies, I think these case studies will start coming to fruition once we can actually start doing these implementations, right? Just literally getting contracts in place with these different governments, getting procurement in place so we can go in and start deploying. And then that's going to enable us to actually, publicly announce these projects as far as what we're doing, and then generate the case studies. So case studies soon to come. And I'm very eager too, because I'm huge on best practices and KPIs. And I think we got some great partnerships here. All these governments are eager to work with us to make this work. So I think that spirit of cooperation is going to help us, implement properly.
Thank you so much, Daniel.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Pleasure.
All right. Have a good one.
Cheers.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.